I should have known something was wrong when I woke up naked in the woods again. The taste of copper filled my mouth, and my hands were caked with dried blood. As I stumbled to my feet, the world spun sickeningly. Fragments of the night before flashed through my mind, running through the forest, heart pounding, muscles burning. The thrill of the hunt. The terror of the kill. No, I shook my head, trying to clear it. Just another nightmare. It had to be. I made my way back to town, sticking to the tree line and praying nobody would see me. The sun was just starting to peek over the horizon as I snuck in through my bedroom window. I'd left it open last night, just in case. Just like I did every full moon. As I showered, watching red-tinged water swirl down the drain, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. The blood, the blackouts, the lost time, it was just the PTSD acting up again. Shell shock, like my granddad used to call it. I'd get better. I had to. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something had happened to me over there, something that went beyond the usual horrors of war. And now that thing inside me was here too, in this sleepy Indiana town where I'd grown up. Where my family and friends lived. Where they weren't safe anymore. I dressed quickly in jeans and a long-sleeved shirt, hiding the fresh scratches on my arms. Time to play the role of Sergeant Jake Hawkins, local boy made good, returned war hero. I plastered on a smile and headed downstairs. Mom was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she made breakfast. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the air, so normal it made my chest ache. "Morning, sweetie," she said, smiling as I came in. "Sleep okay?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. If she noticed the shadows under my eyes or the tremor in my hands, she didn't mention it. "Don't forget, we're having dinner at the Millers tonight," she said, sliding a plate of eggs in front of me. "Sarah's been asking about you." Sarah Miller. My high school sweetheart, the girl next door. We dated all through school, made plans for the future. Then I'd enlisted, and everything changed. Now she was engaged to someone else, and I was this. "Sure, Mom, sounds great." I choked down a few bites of breakfast, my stomach churning. Then I mumbled an excuse and fled, grabbing my jacket on the way out the door. The crisp October air hit me like a slap as I stepped outside. I zipped up my jacket and started walking, no real destination in mind, just needing to move, to get away from the suffocating normalcy of home. I found myself heading toward the old quarry on the edge of town. It had been our hangout spot as teenagers, a place to drink beer and make out away from prying eyes. Now it was abandoned, the equipment rusting and silent. As I approached, I saw a figure sitting on the edge of the quarry, legs dangling over the precipice. My hand instinctively went to the sidearm I no longer carried before I recognized him. "Cooper," I called out. He turned, and a grin split his face. "Holy shit, Hawkins. When'd you get back?" Staff Sergeant James Cooper had been my squad leader in Afghanistan. Last I'd heard, he was still deployed. Seeing him here in civilian clothes was like worlds colliding. I walked over and we clasped hands, pulling each other into a brief, back-slapping hug. "About a month ago." "You?" "2 weeks," he replied. "Figured I'd come see how the most famous son of Millbrook was settling in." I forced a laugh. "Famous? More like infamous. You should hear the rumors flying around town." Cooper's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yeah? What kind of rumors?" There was something in his tone that set me on edge. I shrugged, trying to keep my voice casual. "Oh, you know, the usual small-town gossip. Apparently I'm either a hero or a head case, depending on who you ask." He nodded slowly. "And which one's the truth, Jake?" I met his gaze, feeling like I was being sized up. Come on, man. You know how it is. Some days are better than others. Cooper was quiet for a long moment, staring out over the quarry. When he spoke again, his voice was low and intense. I know what happened out there, Jake. That night in the mountains. My blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. He turned to face me, eyes hard. Cut the bullshit. I was there, remember. I saw what that thing did to you. What you became. Panic clawed at my throat. Cooper, you're not making any sense. Maybe we should. You killed them all. He cut me off. Tore them apart with your bare hands. And then you ran off into the night. We searched for days, but never found a trace. Until now. I took a step back, heart pounding. You're crazy. That's not. I wouldn't. But even as I denied it, memories were surfacing. The ambush in the mountains. The searing pain as something attacked me. The rage that followed, the blood-soaked frenzy. And then, nothing. Cooper stood up slowly, like he was approaching a wild animal. It's okay, Jake. I'm here to help. We can figure this out together. I shook my head, backing away. No, you don't understand. I can't control it. When the moon is full, I change. I know, he said softly. But we can find a way to stop it, to cure you. For a moment, hope flared in my chest. But then I saw the glint of metal in his hand, a syringe filled with silvery liquid. What is that? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Silver nitrate. It'll put you down, nice and easy. No more pain, no more changes. I lunged at him, faster than I thought possible. We grappled at the edge of the quarry, the syringe between us. I could feel the thing inside me stirring, clawing to get out. Jake, stop. Cooper shouted. I'm trying to help you. But it was too late. With a snarl that was more animal than human, I shoved him away. He stumbled, arms pinwheeling, and then he was falling. His scream echoed off the quarry walls, cut short by a sickening thud. I stood there, panting, staring at my shaking hands. What had I done? I peered over the edge. Cooper lay motionless on the rocks below, a dark stain spreading beneath him. The syringe had shattered on impact, its contents spilled uselessly. A howl built in my throat, equal parts anguish and rage. I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush, letting the monster take control. It was easier that way, easier than facing what I'd become. As the sun set and the full moon rose, a long, mournful howl echoed through the woods of Millbrook, and in the shadows, something hungry prowled. The longest month of my life had only just begun. I've never been an outdoorsy person. Give me a cozy apartment, high-speed internet, and a cup of artisanal coffee any day. But when my coworkers invited me on a weekend camping trip to disconnect and recharge, I figured, why not? How bad could roughing it for a couple of days be? I wish I'd never asked that question. My name is Emily Chen. I'm 28 years old, and until last weekend I was a software engineer at a trendy Seattle tech startup. Now I'm not sure what I am. The doctors call it acute stress disorder. The police think I'm either lying or crazy, but I know what I saw, what I experienced, and I need someone, anyone, to believe me. It started normally enough. We drove out to a remote campsite in the Cascade Mountains on Friday afternoon. There were 5 of us, me, my team lead Jake, and 3 other developers, Aisha, Marcus, and Zoe. We hiked a few miles into the wilderness, set up our tents, and spent the evening around the campfire, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. As night fell, the forest around us seemed to come alive. The chittering of insects, the rustle of leaves, the occasional hoot of an owl. It was all so foreign to my city-attuned ears. I tried to relax, to embrace the whole one-with-nature thing, but I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. "Did you guys hear that?" I asked at one point, certain I'd heard something large moving in the underbrush nearby. Jake laughed. "Probably just a deer. Relax, Emily. Nothing out here is going to hurt you." If only he'd been right. We turned in around midnight. I lay awake in my tent for what felt like hours, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the forest. I must have dozed off eventually, because the next thing I knew, I was jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream. For a moment I was frozen in terror. Then survival instinct kicked in, and I scrambled out of my sleeping bag. As I fumbled with the tent zipper, I heard more screams, Aisha's voice, then Marcus's. There was a sickening tearing sound, followed by a wet thud. I burst out of the tent and into a nightmare. The campsite was in chaos. Zoe's tent was shredded, scraps of fabric fluttering in the breeze. Jake was nowhere to be seen, and there, in the middle of it all, was something. In the pale moonlight, I caught only glimpses. It was big, bear-sized at least, but it moved with a fluid grace no bear could match. Its skin seemed to shift and ripple, sometimes furry, sometimes slick and reptilian. And its eyes, God, those eyes, they glowed with an alien intelligence that froze my blood. It had Marcus in its jaws. I watched, paralyzed with horror, as it shook him like a rag doll and tossed him aside. Then its head swiveled towards me, those terrible eyes locking onto mine. I ran. I crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping at my face, roots threatening to trip me with every step. I had no idea where I was going. All I knew was that I had to get away from that thing. Behind me, I could hear it coming. The thunder of massive paws, the snap of jaws, the splintering of wood as it plowed through obstacles I had to dodge around. It was toying with me, I realized. It could have caught me at any time. This was just a game to it. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes? Hours? Time lost all meaning in that primal state of terror. Eventually I stumbled upon a small cave and dove inside without thinking. I wedged myself as far back as I could, praying the creature was too big to follow. For a long time there was only the sound of my ragged breathing and pounding heart. Then I heard it, a low, rumbling growl just outside the cave entrance. Claws scraped against stone as it tried to reach in. I closed my eyes, certain this was the end. But then, miraculously, it retreated. I heard its heavy footsteps moving away, fading into the distance. I stayed in that cave until dawn, shivering and sobbing. When the first rays of sunlight finally penetrated the gloom, I cautiously emerged. The forest seemed almost obscenely peaceful in the morning light, as if the horrors of the night had never happened. It took me hours to find my way back to the campsite. What I found there defied explanation. The tents were shredded, just as I remembered, but there were no bodies, no blood, no sign of the carnage I'd witnessed. Just 5 backpacks neatly lined up, including my own. I grabbed my pack with trembling hands and found my phone. No signal, of course, but as I scrolled through my photos, my blood ran cold. The last image, taken at 3:17 a.m., showed a shadowy figure looming over our campsite. Its eyes glowed in the flash, and its form seemed to blur and shift even in the still image. Somehow I made it back to the trailhead. I flagged down a passing car and got a ride into the nearest town, where I immediately went to the police. They didn't believe me, of course. How could they? 4 missing persons, no bodies, no evidence of any struggle beyond some damaged camping gear. And my story, a shape-shifting monster that hunts humans for sport. They chalked it up to a mental breakdown, said the stress of the situation must have caused me to hallucinate or confabulate. But I know what I saw, what I experienced. That thing is still out there, in the Cascades, waiting, hunting. And the most terrifying part, as I sit here in my apartment, jumping at every shadow, I can't shake the feeling that it followed me home. That those glowing eyes are watching me even now, waiting for the perfect moment to finish what it started. So believe me or don't. Call me crazy if you want. But whatever you do, stay out of those mountains. Some things in this world are better left undisturbed, and some wildernesses are not meant for human survival.